with the recent Tyler Lockett news, I was asking myself, should I be selling Jackson Smith and Jigba in Dynasty leagues now? Because obviously we've been big supporters, but it got me thinking, there's a couple receivers, especially young receivers, that I'm like, is there any analytical evidence to suggest that they might not be the studs that we thought they were coming out of college? So I had our guy, Ryan Bredd, do some research for me. Ryan Bredd, our lead analyst over at flockfantasy.com/domain. And I was like, okay, can you find some kind of trend with wide receiver finishes over their first 2 or 3 seasons where it's like they finish wide receiver X or higher like most of the studs do? And so he pulled this data for me, and I thought it was really interesting. Here on the screen, wide receiver 36 or better in their first and second season. Chase, Jefferson, Ayuk, Waddle, McLaurin, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, C.D. Lamb, Chris Olave, Calvin Ridley, T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson. So pretty much Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, all of your studs, all of your elite. So pretty much most of the guys in the top 3 rounds, the receivers in the top 3 rounds of Dynasty startups right now are on this list. And again, that's wide receiver 36 or better in their first and their second season. That's just mull over that data for a minute. On the second table here, this is rookie season wide receiver 24 or better. And so this gives us even more concentrated studs here. This is elite company. Chase, Jefferson, Waddle, Juju, Amon-Ra, A.J. Brown, C.D. Lamb, Calvin Ridley, Garrett Wilson, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, and Amari Cooper. Okay?
Where's Puka there?
Well, yeah, he didn't include the guys from this year on this list. But,
gotcha.
But yeah. I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So then I was like, okay, let's get a little bit more broad with this. And so then he sent me the full list of wide receivers with 2 wide receivers 36 or better finishes in the first 3 years of their career. And this broadens the list to include some guys that weren't on the original list, like Cooper Kupp, DJ Moore. So some of these late breakout guys, Deontay Johnson's on here. Mm-hmm. Obviously there are some guys on here, but when you're looking at guys on here that really didn't maintain fantasy relevance, Juju Smith-Schuster is one of them. Kenny Golladay is another, and that's pretty much it. Like a lot of these guys are still
they're hits,
extreme. They're hits. This is a very high hit rate when you're looking at this data. So now, considering that, let's talk about some of the young wide receiver assets that are on the dynasty market right now that we're not so sure about, because there were only, so when you're looking at this, the takeaway is studs finish their rookie wide receiver as wide receiver 24 or better and then keep up the pace the following season. The only 2 of the above, so that's the list of the wide receivers that had 2 of 3 top 36 finishes in their first 3 seasons. Only 2 of the players above had a wide receiver 37 or worse season in their second season, and they were both due to injury. Both due to injury there. Okay. So consistency here and putting together back-to-back decent rookie years is a big trend that can be used to analyze which prospects have a higher likelihood of becoming like studs. And this is really a video about identifying the studs. But sometimes it's like, what are we drafting JSN to be a stud? Because we were drafting JSN to be a stud on this list. We were. And so I think a lot of people...
As a rookie, we were, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so let's look at it through the context of this lens. First of all, let's look at the 2023 rookies. 2 guys. Tank Dell probably would have been on here, but he got hurt. So we'll see what he does next year. I think he could the next 2 years have 2 wide receiver 36 or higher finishes easily and be on this list. Puka Nacua made this list last year, and Jordan Addison. So these were guys that finished wide receiver 36 or better in their first season. Okay. So that leaves us some big names here that we need to talk about. Let's talk about Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now, this really was what was making me think here was the news that Tyler Lockett was coming back. And in my opinion, this really hurts JSN's stock. Like, I believe in JSN the talent, and I think he can transcend the situation. But in my opinion, I think Tyler Lockett is still good enough to where he's going to significantly hinder the amount of volume that JSN can get in the short to intermediate game in that offense. And because of that, I don't think there really is an avenue for JSN to produce as a top 24 wide receiver this year, especially with likely Geno Smith being the quarterback in Seattle. When you're looking at JSN's stats from last year, his average depth of target was very short because of how they were using him. And I honestly, look, new offensive coordinator is going to be the best hope here. New coaching regime, new offensive coordinator. That is going to be your number one hope. So if you want to cling to that, then maybe you can make an argument. Now, obviously, JSN's value has gone down a little bit since the Lockett news, so it does counteract some of my instinct to sell him. And I can't say that I am actively selling him because, again, if he's going to go in the late 6th, I'm like, I'll just take a shot on the talent. But I'm curious what you think of JSN, given that he obviously didn't have this production in his first season, so he's not meeting the stud requirements that we've seen hit at like a 90% plus rate. And also now you have Tyler Lockett coming back, somebody who I think is still a very good NFL receiver.
Yeah, I think the key thing here is that it was just his rookie season, and he has really 2 more years to be able to meet this threshold that we're talking about. Another thing to note here too is we're playing Dynasty Fantasy Football, which is a game of value. At this point, am I expecting JSN to be a top 6 to 8 Dynasty wide receiver for his career from here on out? Not like I was expecting him to a year ago as a rookie. Like, that ship, in my opinion, has sailed. What I am trying to do, though, is play the market and play the value game, and that is if he's going in the 5th round, before this Lockett news, he was going in the 5th round.
Correct.
I liked his value. I thought he had room to increase significantly. Now, we just did a couple updated mocks with the new Lockett news, and he was falling late 6th. I would anticipate, since JSN was already falling before the Lockett news, I bet you he falls into the 7th. Are you drafting JSN in the 7th round of Dynasty Starters?
I would draft him still.
Yeah, and now, that's kind of where I'm at.
Keep in mind, saying that I would draft him there doesn't change the fact that you're drafting the wide receiver 3 on a team in the 7th round. I mean, that's risky.
And I think that is another assumption that we're making as well, is that JSN is going to be the wide receiver 3 in his offense next year. I mean, yes, Tyler Lockett had a decent season target-wise last year. He had 122 targets for 79 receptions and 894 yards and 5 touchdowns. JSN, as a rookie, still had 93 targets for 63 receptions. So he had a better translation rate of like actually turning those targets into receptions, which makes you think of, reliability. He can probably do some stuff in the slot. And 628 yards, only 200 yards less than Tyler Lockett as a rookie, and 4 touchdowns, 1 touchdown less than Tyler Lockett as a rookie. So you're looking at this new wide receiver market too. Like this is another thing for me. The current wide receiver market for the highest paid guys in the NFL is about $30 million, right? For your Tyreek Hills and stuff like that. This was not an extension necessarily for Tyler Lockett. He was already under contract, and they had a potential out in 2024. They picked up those final 2 years. And what's he owed those years? $17 million apiece, which is, that's, in my opinion, that's a little bit more than I'd be willing to pay Tyler Lockett. But also, this is kind of an odd situation for Seattle where, like you said, they're going into this new coaching regime with probably a plan set in place for what they're going to do with Geno Smith long term, right? They're probably going to see what they get out of him this year and then potentially go with a quarterback next year. If J.J. McCarthy goes day 2, look for Seattle to draft J.J. McCarthy. And I feel like Lockett's kind of just that bridge wide receiver, kind of like that Adam Thielen type almost, that veteran presence who's a team culture guy who kind of stays there but is able to take a backseat as these other guys develop. DK Metcalf is in the prime of his career right now. We don't speak super highly of DK Metcalf as a dynasty asset with this price right now, but I mean, he's a big part of that offense, and he takes a lot of opportunity and a lot of volume.
Good NFL receiver.
And we have said time and time again that Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf can produce at the same time. DK Metcalf, JSN can produce at the same time. I am of the opinion that even though there are questions with JSN, I'm of the firm opinion that I think Tyler Lockett is going to take a big step back this season.
Interesting. Okay. So that's essentially what you're betting on when you're like...
That's what I'm betting on, and I'm pretty confident in it because he is going into his 32-year-old season. He's been banged up in the past. He did play all 17 games this last year, but if I'm not mistaken, I think he was banged up in some of those games.
You're probably right. And he's 30 years old.
And his efficiency, the efficiency is really, really what.
I mean, it's not like JSN didn't ding into his production. He did.
Right. I mean, look, Tyler Lockett had less targets in 2022 and was a wide receiver 13 in total points than he did in 2023, where he ended up being the wide receiver 32.
Yeah.
I mean, that's already, he did not, 122 targets, 79 receptions, 117 targets, 84 receptions in 2022 for over 1,000 yards versus just under 900. So
yeah, to really be in on JSN, like, you have to believe one of two things. Like, either Tyler Lockett is going to take a big step back, or that DK, Tyler Lockett, and JSN can all produce.
I don't think Geno Smith can support that consistently.
Yeah.
So that's,
So Jordan Addison is also a guy I want to talk about here because Jordan Addison did meet the threshold here in his first season. He's a wide receiver 23. When you're looking at Jordan Addison's last 9 games of the season, he averaged 10.6 points per game. I know Kirk Cousins got hurt, and I know that was a big part of it, but that argument doesn't really matter now because Kirk Cousins isn't his quarterback. And in my opinion, this makes a big difference on Jordan Addison's future production and future value moving forward. Jordan Addison's a guy that is going to take a hit from the Kirk Cousins news. But at the same time, I also want to stress the other way, just because Jordan Addison met this criteria in his first year doesn't mean that he's going to be one of those stud wide receivers.
Correct.
And in fact, I'm of the firm opinion that Jordan Addison is not going to be in a group with these guys. And I am of the firm opinion that Jordan Addison will not have a top 24 wide receiver finish next year.
Yeah.
So what does that tell me for Jordan Addison? It tells me that if he's not going to produce like he did, the expectations are that he probably will, or at least they were before the Kirk Cousins news. So this is why we've been softly pivoting off of Jordan Addison all offseason.
We've been doing a lot of team blueprints recently, and one of the biggest recommended sells that we've had, not one of the biggest, but something that we've been consistently recommending is just softly moving off of Jordan Addison. It's nothing against him as a player or a talent. We really like him, loved him coming out of college, but we're just saying, let's pivot off of him. Let's get a guy who actually has wide receiver 1 potential and isn't playing behind Justin Jefferson, who's capping his ceiling. And if you want one of those team blueprints, you can go over to flockfantasy.com/domain. You have to use code domain. You can throw your roster there in the Discord in the team blueprints channel, and we will do a team blueprint for you. We'll give you all that analysis, all those recommendations, buys, sells, suggestions, and comments for your roster. Super awesome, super cool. If we get 100 Mother Flocker signups, which is how you get a blueprint, I have to stay up all night. He has to stay up all night for an all-night live stream. It's going to suck. I might throw up because I get sleep deprived and it makes me feel sick. But It's totally worth it.
Like not only do you get to join like our Dynasty community, but you could see Nathan throw up live on that would be so funny. That would literally be the best thing that ever happened on this show. But so let's pivot to Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is interesting because Zay Flowers, and you're looking again at that full list of wide receivers with 2 wide receiver 36 or better seasons in their first 3 seasons. So 2 of the first 3 seasons, they were wide receiver 3 or higher. Zay Flowers met that criteria this year, wide receiver 31 in PPR leagues. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I would be more willing to bet on Zay Flowers being on this list long term and being able to increase his stock than Jordan Addison, because Zay Flowers is on a team where he is the wide receiver 1 for the time being and probably for the future, with a quarterback that just won MVP that is on a multi-year deal. If anything, to me, that screams he's probably going to put together another wide receiver 36 or better season in the next 2 years. And then the odds of him hitting at that point are greatly increased according to these analytics. And so with Zay Flowers, like, I know that he had his ups and downs his rookie year. But at the same time, when you're looking at, kind of his streak at the end of the year, here's his last 5 games: 23, 21, 22, and 19. So outside of the one crappy game he had, he was on a tear there. And you saw touchdowns in each of those games besides the one. And so obviously, Zay Flowers, we did see better production. I mean, this is true of anybody, but all of his top 5 or 6 games were all the games he scored a touchdown in. And this is something definitely to keep track of. But with Zay Flowers, I don't know about you, but I'm more willing to bet on Zay Flowers than I would be Jordan Addison, just purely based on the fact that he's the wide receiver 1 for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, more than Jordan Addison, but I'm still not super duper high on Zay Flowers. Honestly, I've kind of gotten to a point where of that chunk of wide receivers like Jaden Reed, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, and JSN, whoever is the cheapest of those 4, when it's all said and done in terms of startup value, I'm probably going to be investing in them, because I think there's a lot of legitimate question marks with every single one of them when you're talking about long-term upside and production upside. And with Zay Flowers, even though I like him more than Addison right now with the situation, I still question his long-term upside. And that was what people questioned going into his rookie year because he was playing with Lamar. And we said at that price, it didn't matter because he was going to produce and he was going to be the wide receiver 1. Now that he is the bona fide wide receiver 1 in Baltimore, I do have legitimate questions about his upside. And it's not just because of Mark Andrews, or it's not just because of Lamar Jackson's rushing upside, or that Mark Andrews is still there, or, the boogeyman Isaiah Likely. Just kidding, that was a joke. But they could still, they're going to go out there and probably draft a running back. They're going to go out there and probably still run the same type of offense that they did last year. And yeah, that'll still involve Zay Flowers. But again, is he a guy that I can envision long-term being like a consistent top 12 producing wide receiver? Not really. Maybe
no, he's more of a wide receiver 2 guy,
right? And,
yes,
and that's kind of my reluctance with him. But yeah, that's just where I'm at.
So let's look at some other guys here. Jaden Reed, wide receiver 25 in his first year. He's obviously one good season away from being in this group as well. He joined a great company.
And he's the cheapest. Like,
yes, he is. And so I think that's why he could be the buyout of this group, honestly, Jaden Reed. Like mid six, late six round
He's the
price,
guy I'm having people target right now because he's the cheapest of the group.
Christian Watson is officially disqualified from being able to make this group because he finishes wide receiver 41 and wide receiver 68 in his first 2 years. So he will not
But
be
he was
in this
injured.
group. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So let's play the ifs and the buts.
So George Pickens is close. Right. 39 his first year and 30 last year. So he could have a top 36 wide receiver season this year. I'm not betting on that, but it's possible. So kind of wait and see. Drake London, 31 his first year, so he hit it. 37 just outside this year. So, but this year he's going to be a top 36 wide receiver. So Drake London's going to be in this group. Chris Olave is already in this group, and Garrett Wilson is also already in this group. So
I can't believe Garrett Wilson is like, I can because he's so good, but this just,
I know.
In hindsight, you're like, how the actual heck did he do that?
So those are just, that's just one pattern that we found. And in our opinion, like, I do think there is something to be said about wide receivers and their ability to produce right away in the NFL these days. Because a lot of the guys on these lists, if you'll put them up on the screen again, a lot of these guys on this list have been drafted in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is, and I don't know how far back he went with the research, but even then, it's happening at a higher rate than it used to. Because with Jerry Jeudy was kind of what the other thing that drove me to do this video. Like, we were so slow to call Jerry Jeudy a bust, when in reality, I mean, Jerry Jeudy really didn't do anything of substance ever. Like, Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 47, 85. Then he was 22 and 22. So he had a good year. And then 50. But, I mean, we could have guessed after his first 2 years being wide receiver 47, wide receiver 85, we could have used this and said, oh, Jerry Jeudy, the odds are he's going to be a bust, and sold when he was the wide receiver 22.
Yeah, it was the end of the third year that really hooked people on Jerry Jeudy again and made it a tough situation. And what is this research not saying? I kind of want to bring it back and talk about it again, because I don't think this research is saying that if a wide receiver doesn't meet these requirements, that he'll never, ever be a value relevant receiver who can increase in value and be dominant in the NFL. Like, that's not necessarily the case, even though this is an
Nico
extensive
Collins
list.
isn't in this
Nico
group.
Collins is case in point. I was going to bring that up. And I think that's something where you looked beyond your opinion of what he did over the last couple of years, not just your opinion, but what he objectively did the last couple of years, and you said, this situation is different. This situation is immensely better. And I think that's something that you're going to have to look at when you're talking about the Jordan Addison situation. Do you think it will be better? Do you think it will be worse? If they draft Michael Penix in the first or second round, do you think that this kind of changes your opinion on what Jordan Addison could do going into 2024? Jackson Smith and Jigba, disappointing year one, playing behind Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Does that now change with this new coaching regime? There are situations. Everything always ends up being subjective because of how many moving pieces there are in the NFL. But this is really to help you kind of make a more guided dart throw on your value investments, especially in your startup drafts. If people are sold on a player who hasn't produced in a couple years since they came into the NFL, like a Christian Watson, don't take him at price.
And guys, Jameson Williams is out too, by the way. I just wanted to throw that out there. He's still holding early eighth round value. And I cannot believe he has that.
That's insane.
First two, wide receiver 155 his first year, and wide receiver 82 his second year.
Jahan Dotson is another guy that a lot of people want to believe in still, and I like Jahan Dotson as a talent. If he increases in value because of the quarterback that they draft, it depends on how high he goes. If he increases in value by a significant margin, then I'm probably just going to ship him off because I'm not willing to take on the risk. Yeah, maybe I'll eat my words after he produces like Nico Collins did his third year, but it's too rare.
Wide receiver 51 and wide receiver 56. Odds are he's not going to be one of those wide receivers that are studs. You can hold on to him in hopes that he's like, the 5th, 6th round wide receiver range, but he's a perfect example of somebody that I'm not in on, and this kind of furthers that claim. So, all right, do us a huge favor. Make sure you drop a like on this video. Let us know what you think in the comments. Make sure you subscribe if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football and you enjoy Dynasty analysis. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later.